Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about how to avoid hosting burnout. We're entering the busiest time of year, and there are lots of gatherings that will take place in our homes over the next 6 weeks or so. Join us as we discuss tips for making hosting duties easier, ways to take care of yourself while taking care of others, and how to enjoy this joyful season. Let's get started. Listeners, Thanksgiving is almost here and it kicks off the holiday season. We'll find ourselves in the middle of various festivities for the next 6 weeks. And many of you will be hosting family or friend gatherings. You might do just a turkey dinner, or you might have a house full of overnight guests, or anything in between. And while this season brings a lot of joy, it can also induce a lot of stress. And Julie and Mindy, last week we talked about happiness school, and probably when we look at hosting in the next 6 weeks and all the things that come with Christmas shopping and having gatherings, we'll find ourselves having to use some of those good, positive thought things like we talked about last week. I don't know.
Yes.
How about you guys? Do you feel like you'll be putting those to use?
Yeah, I have to pay attention to those emotions and thoughts for sure. And I do have a very funny statistic I wanted to read because I read that 1 in 3 Americans is set to endure festive burnout. They had that in quotes before Christmas. And a survey showed that the average American will endure 3 awkward jokes from family members. They will get asked 3 personal questions about their love lives from family members. They will get into 4 arguments with family members, and they will overeat 6 times.
Oh, wow. Okay, how are they even compiling all this information?
Right.
I don't know, but
that's funny.
You think about, when big families get together, it's like, oh, when are you going to have another baby? Or you're still not married yet? When is that? People just, it's like the filter goes away when you get with aunts and uncles. And
yes, definitely. If you can't be real with your family, who can you be real with?
Oh my goodness. Hold your breath. No, don't do that. No, thinking back to what we talked about before, what we talked about last month with the happy school, I have to think do one thing and think about one thing at a time. So this is where I have to remind myself, don't project into the future with all of the holiday things coming up or the people or the interactions. And I have to think, okay, one thing at a time. Don't go too far ahead because a lot is about to happen.
All right. And that's a good reminder to, live in reality, not your thoughts, because we don't know
right.
how it's going to play out yet.
All right, well, let's talk about some of our typical Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday scenes. And we're going to talk about maybe what we do if we're hosting family and friends, or if we're just helping people host. I would say that I'm hosting at least once and sometimes twice or even 3 times for any given holiday. Like I'm thinking if you have Friendsgiving, you host. You might have that. Then 2 days later, you might have Thanksgiving at your house. Then maybe a certain family member wasn't able to come to Thanksgiving or Christmas. So a couple days later, you're having a separate celebration to celebrate with that person. You can get into a lot of hosting, over the holidays. Does this happen with you guys?
It really does. Our home has been the hosting home pretty much every year since I turned 20. I mean,
oh, wow.
I was very young when I took over hosting responsibilities for Thanksgiving. And so we have a lot of stories over the years. And this has been a huge blessing. So I'm not saying that I have been burdened. But I mean, hosting comes with its own set of circumstances. So I'm glad we're talking about this.
Right. And that's what we really want to talk about is just how to avoid hosting burnout, because like you said, there are different responsibilities of the host than there are for the guest. And there's different feelings about the gathering for the host than there are for the guests. And there's different preparation and there's whole different thought process. And so we just want to explore that today.
Yeah. Right.
Thanksgiving is my least favorite holiday, by the way.
Okay.
I seem to remember you saying that in the past, Julie. Yeah.
And it's always very guilt-inducing to say that because it sounds like I'm not thankful. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a link there or not, but I guess I just don't like the traditions. And it's hard to have a small Thanksgiving because turkeys aren't small. And if you want to, keep with the tradition and all the different sides, it's a lot of cooking. You really can't have a small Thanksgiving.
True.
Right.
Yeah. And I do it all myself. So it's just not that fun. And my mom used to do a lot of it, but now she joins us and our boys. And so it's just, I don't know, it's nothing special to me. The most special years have been when we've hosted a friend or even just an acquaintance sometimes, like somebody that was going to be alone or didn't have a place to go, couldn't be with their family. And those were always memorable years. For us.
Right. Well, let's take a look at a listener question that we got. This person writes, "It seems that I'm the one always hosting for holidays. I really do love being with my extended family, but sometimes I find myself feeling a little resentful as everyone else seems to be on holiday while I do all the work. How can I keep from burning out?" And I think that probably we can all relate to this question at some point or another. I think listeners, if you've ever hosted anything, you can definitely understand where this person is coming from. And I like her use of the word burning out. That's obviously where we got the title for this episode, was from her question, because it's not like we start out dreading it or, not wanting to do it. You can be so gung-ho about hosting something and you can still burn out.
Right. Every time I plan a big party, I see all the fun and I'm like, oh, we should do this. And then I'll go ahead and hurry up and invite people before the details of how to organize it and put it together fully enter my mind, because I know I'm going to go from this is going to be super fun to, oh my gosh, this is so much work.
Yeah. And so it definitely is work. And I think that, I know that my kids have kind of a joke. They're also serious about the fact that they almost have mentioned at different times over the years that maybe they don't want to have people over because then I get all crazy, like with the cleaning and the preparation, and I expect them to put their stuff away, and I want them to get dressed, and I want them to be on their good behavior. And like it requires things from them that they may not be wanting to do. But you can't host and not do some of those things, you know? And so already from the bat, just by inviting people, Mindy, you've already set yourself up for work.
Hey, this is when my house gets clean. Okay. Go ahead and invite people over. You'll be so thankful when it's all done. It's just a process.
Yes.
This makes me laugh because it makes me think of the movie Christmas Vacation, which we quote a lot. And the mom is in the kitchen. I think she's smoking, and I don't even know that she does smoke. And her daughter is complaining about having to sleep with her brother because they made her give up her room for the grandparents. And
I love this scene.
The daughter says, you don't know what it's like to have to sleep with your brother. And the mom goes, I have to sleep with your father.
And then she says, we all have to make sacrifices.
Yeah, she goes, it's Christmas and we're all in misery.
And that's why that's funny, because we can all relate.
Yes. We don't even have crazy Uncle Eddie outside living in his RV.
Right.
All right. Well, in many families, traditionally, we remember our grandparents hosting. Like, I remember going to my grandparents, for Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthdays or whatever. And then our parents and that generation takes over. And that was just as fun. Like, oh, sure, Mom. What? I just have to bring mashed potatoes? Great.
Yeah.
We'll be there at 3 with 5 kids and all the entourage. And yes. Oh, I can't wait for that meal. And then it's like it starts to fall on us. And when did that happen for you guys? Like, when did it move from, oh, I'm a guest at Thanksgiving to, oh, I'm the hostess?
Well, growing up, my grandmother always hosted Thanksgiving and Christmas. So she had 3 children. They were married. All the grandkids, cousins were all there. And she had a small house. And I remember, thinking, oh, well, we're all bringing the sides. So how,
how much work could it be?
Yeah. How much work could it be? And then I think she had set the dining room table. She had to set up the kids table, where all the adult kids had to sit in the den. And she always had nice linens. And I think she used her china, and she cooked the turkey. She made homemade rolls that just seemed endless because all the grandkids would run and steal them from the oven, and it was just pure bliss, like, to be there. But I had no idea what she went through.
Right.
And once she died, it kind of went to each child, then just kind of went to hosting their own family celebration. And that was kind of sad, because we weren't all getting together again. And then when John and I got married, we did start to host some of that, not regularly, but it just wasn't the same without her.
Right. I think as a kid, like a really large gathering, well, I still feel this way as an adult, a really large gathering is what holidays are. And so I could see how if you've had like all these cousins and all this extended family, and then the person that was hosting that isn't there anymore, and all of a sudden it's different, that would feel very different. What about you, Mindy? We know what it felt to you, I guess, at 20.
I know. Very early. Very early in life, yes. Those are some of my favorite memories, but my family has been marked by distance, and we have not lived near my grandparents, and now I don't live near my parents. And so this is a typical military family situation. And so when we were close enough to get to my grandparents, we would all travel when I was younger to their house. And it was just the best time with cousins, aunts, being at the kids' table, making a mess, getting in trouble, all the fun stuff. And so then in my very early married years, my parents hosted us up in Missouri when we were close by. But then when Bryce and I moved away, we started doing Thanksgiving on our own. And so then my mother-in-law and sister-in-law and my nieces would come to our house. And so I did take on this responsibility very early in life. However, it was actually a blessing to me to do so. And our family made that decision together. And it was because the more children we added, the harder it got to travel with little kids. And so basically we could have traveled to someone's house and they would have hosted us happily. But so that we didn't have to travel with 4 littles, I took on the hosting responsibilities so that they could come and stay in our home. And so it just kind of naturally happened that way. And that is something that we made an active decision about, actually, as a bigger family unit. My mother-in-law said, oh, I can easily fly to you, or I'll drive down with Emily, or whatever. And so it just kind of turned into that. So
yeah,
so it was a trade-off.
It was a trade-off. Yes.
Yeah. And you actively made that decision. And I can remember kind of when I felt like my hosting duties began and my freeloading ended was when I had hosted things before that, Mother's Day, all that stuff, but I'm talking about like particularly Thanksgiving and Christmas. I know I had the twins, and maybe they were a year or 2 old. And, my brother lives down the street. My sister lives a half hour away. My other brother at the time lived close. We would all get together. I mean, it could be like 20 people. And my mom came to me and said, hey, Marie, how about you do Thanksgiving or Christmas this year? And I remember thinking, what? This is not the way life is. Like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
No, I don't want to do that. I said this all in my mind. And meanwhile, what do you say? I mean, obviously, she would like the chance to be a guest and would like to not have to take it on all the time. And I am the oldest girl, you guys. We're going to talk about this as we go on. But being the oldest girl, you will find that the mantle is passed to your shoulders first. So, Abigail, if you're listening, it's coming for you.
Yeah, heads up.
See, I think the unwritten rule should be that the oldest person alive host until they absolutely can't do it anymore.
That's what you think it should be?
You host until you die.
Right. It's like you're the grandmother, then the mother. It's like you don't take it any earlier.
Yeah. So, and now it's pretty much a given that I will take one or the other. And then, gradually my brother's, his wife hosted a Thanksgiving or a Christmas. Like, it has to make its way around the family, but we didn't have like a big family meeting, but it was kind of done by like little pinpricks at different people. Like, come on, your turn to step up. Okay, we had it here last year. Who wants to volunteer? Like kind of just like everybody take a turn and
right. I don't see my hosting responsibility ever going away. Julie, I'm going to be the one that has to die before I'm done hosting. First of all, I do enjoy it. I will say that. Second of all, we bought a house. We always buy a house that can host. That is one of the main decisions that goes into what house will we buy. Well, it's one that when Abby and Joey come home and Grant come home, they have a place to go. It's one that when we host Thanksgiving, they have a place to go. When we host Christmas, they have a place to go. And we really that's the house that we own. We own the hosting house.
Mm-hmm. One other issue that might be pertinent to people in midlife is when you have kids that are married and have families and you still have some at home. It's a little awkward because my daughter lives away. So I can't see myself going to her house and leaving my sons here. Like if they couldn't travel because of work or school, to spend Thanksgiving alone. So I'm not there yet. Like if each one had their own family, then I could see us, we're going to spend Thanksgiving with you this year and then you. But I'm not, that just feels too weird right now.
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some reasons listeners or ourselves, we might find ourselves hosting often or feel stuck hosting. And these are different maybe than what we've talked about earlier. Like maybe you find that you have a lot of guests because you live in a fun city or you have the biggest house. So now you have to have all the holidays. Mindy lives in a fun city, or she has at various times, and she's had the biggest house, and she is the oldest girl. She hits every single one of these.
Oh, told you, I gotta die. No,
and people love it at your house and seem to think it's easy for you. So really, every single reason falls on Mindy.
You're the perfect host.
Well, for real, I do. I feel like I hit all of those things. I mean, we're not necessarily in a city that you would equate as fun. Now we're in a small town. However, we are on the way to the beach.
Okay.
So I have gotten a fun guest because they were headed to the beach. So I do enjoy that. I mean, I really do.
Right. But yeah, I mean, we can find ourselves hosting a lot. And I feel for the people that live in fun cities because, I've been tempted to call people that live in fun cities before, hey, can we spend one night? But then I kind of think of Mindy's story that she shared where she had like 6 weekends in a row of guests when she lived in Nashville in the summer. I'm like, I'm probably not the only person calling that person.
Marie, it was 8 weekends.
Oh, 8 weekends. Okay.
It was the entire summer.
Yeah.
But she has no negative thoughts about that.
No, none.
She's interrupting those negative thoughts.
That was a learned thing that was the one day at a time because I wanted to fully intentionally enjoy each person. But yeah, overall, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I know we get a good number of house guests, partly because of our house size and John's willingness.
Yeah, John has an open door.
And living in a fun city, we get a lot of people that are on their way to somewhere, and Nashville's a fun place to stop. Or it could be simply that it's our year in the rotation. And one fun thing that we hosted was New Year's Eve, and we hosted it with two or three other couples for years. And so typically I could have like 15 to 16 guests overnight for 2 or 3 nights around New Year's. And I remember several New Year's Eves, we never went to bed. All these kids are awake all night long. All the adults are awake all night long. And even that didn't happen for a while lately because kids got engaged. So they weren't going to be part of it. And so, the parents wanted to spend the holidays with them. And so I think now that we're all almost empty nesters, that might come around again.
Yes.
And we might revive that. But that was always fun. And if you're listening and you were a guest at my house, I don't resent or regret any of it.
No.
But I will say that if I did get burnout, and we'll talk about this later, it was mostly self-inflicted burnout.
Right. Yeah, this is good for us to talk about because there there are tricks and hacks to.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, then let's kind of talk about how different personality types might be affected by hosting. Like, could some people be more likely to experience burnout than others? Like, Julie, I think it sounds so awesome to be one of the 15 or 16 people spending the night at your house for 2 or 3 nights. Like, that sounds great. When I think about being you, that doesn't sound so great. So, like, I don't know what that says about me, but Mindy's also shaking her head. We want to be guests in that situation, but maybe not the host.
I want to be a guest. When she said they never went to bed, I'm like, that's a nightmare. I mean,
well, it would be now, but it wasn't then.
I know. I say that's one of the things that that's one of my things is you have to get a good night's sleep. Otherwise, there's no way you can tackle or have that many people in your home.
Right. Well,
I think as a perfectionist, I spent many years wanting the holidays to be perfect. And I mean, who am I kidding? I still want that, and I want things to be homemade, everything from the gifts to the food to the decorations. And I really don't regret that. I just know, and I think it's important to recognize when you can no longer do that, that you are okay to dial it back and to scale it down some. But I really don't regret it. It was fun, but there was a time and a place for that, and I might be done with that.
Right.
Yeah. Or, and as a parent, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, as a mom, we want to do everything for our kids. Like, each kid has a certain tradition they like, and they don't want to give that up. So then you end up trying to maintain all of them because each kid has a different favorite thing they like to continue. And I think that's just natural. Moms want to do that. And sometimes you do things over and above that just about kill you.
Right. I know. I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist because I can remember back to my young self anticipating for this holiday and wanting to replicate the feelings of my grandmother's house. Well, lots of people were bringing food. No one was bringing food to my house. It was just me. So I just thought, I have to cook all of those things. And I have to cook them at the quality and quantity that I'm used to. Well, that's not fair to anybody. And then I remember thinking my table has to be Martha Stewart worthy. And I would stress over the table and the seating, and it had like everything had to be just so. Well, then I had 4 little kids, and you can't control 4 little kids. And I have to tell you, there was one Thanksgiving that completely broke me. And that's the Thanksgiving where everything went wrong. My turkey didn't cook. I sliced 3 fingers open trying to make one of the many casseroles I was trying to put together. And I was at the end of myself, completely and utterly depressed about how horrible it felt like it all was.
It's a fun story now.
We had all this family. I had invited all of these random people that didn't have a place to go. I'm like, if I'm having a group, I might as well have a big group. So if you need a spot, you come over. I had all these people, and I just felt like an utter failure. And I had to recover, and I had to heal, and I had to get my mind right, because that is not what people want when they come to your house.
Right. Well, and I think that as a perfectionist, I can look like I had a really great time and be saying goodbye to everybody and saying, yes, this was wonderful, so glad. And then after people leave, I go over in my mind all the things I wish I would have done differently, like, why didn't I cook that differently? Or, oh, I forgot to even put this out. I bought it and then I never even put it out. Or, oh, why did I say that? Right. That totally was the wrong thing to say. Or just all the different things about being a host. Or, you round the corner and you find, oh, I forgot to clean the bathroom. And, oh, people used this bathroom the whole night and that's what it looked like. Or, whatever. Like, I just think as hosts, we can have so many different reactions even after the party's over.
Yeah. And if as a perfectionist, it can cause me to feel like, wow, I don't even think I had a good conversation with that person because I was so exhausted by the time they got here, or I was, so focused on the food prep or whatever that I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would.
Right.
And That's not a good feeling afterwards.
Right. I used to have that big letdown too. I think that that's a natural letdown after planning and preparing for a major event or activity. And so over time, I have learned that the way that I rate my event is how everyone felt or how I felt at the end. And so now I try to intentionally place more focus on, are people enjoying themselves, and am I enjoying myself and available to the people that are there? And so I think if we've had some good conversations and a lot of laughter, then I'm like, okay, success. That event was a success.
Well, one personality type that we didn't mention, and Mindy, the person that is this type of personality is going to listen to you saying, let's have a party and invite all these people. And they're going to be like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a heart attack here. Are introverts, like, can introverts host? How does it feel? Like, I'm not, I am an introvert, but I can be extroverted in a group of people. So I don't really know what it feels like to be a true introvert and be called on to host a big gathering. Do either of you guys know how that would feel?
No, I could probably get a glimpse of it from my daughter's perspective and my son-in-law, because I do thrive around people, but even then I still need a break. And I think it's important that it's okay to say, I need a nap, or if you have overnight guests, or I need to go out and take a walk. Because sometimes you just don't want to have to talk anymore. And that's easier to do when family's staying with you than with friends.
Right.
I feel like you can say to your family and you feel comfortable enough that they'll understand. But sometimes with friends, you don't feel like you can do that.
Right.
Like you're always on. And that can be exhausting for an introvert.
That was something I had to learn about myself. I didn't know about myself. I didn't realize that I had introvert qualities. But then when I felt so exhausted after all of the interactions, and I didn't know how to put balance in there to make sure I was going to bed at a good time still, to make sure I was maybe still going for a walk by myself, just to kind of recharge, because I do enjoy and I get excited about hosting and having people, but I very much get exhausted by it, by all the stimulation. And it's like, I need some quiet. I need some peace. I need no talking, no noise to recharge in the midst.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about the pluses and pitfalls of hosting. And we listed the pluses first. And what are some pluses of hosting? Because there are some pluses. I find that I do enjoy what you said, Mindy, like the anticipation of the event, the anticipation of having people over, the planning for maybe the menu. It's kind of like all the pluses also have a flip side. So yes, I might enjoy that as I'm getting ready for something. And then if it didn't go quite well, I consider it a pitfall. Like, I don't know. What did you guys have down for pluses?
I think for everything we love about hosting, there's probably two things that stress us out about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to take one with the other, and sharing and hosting always adds just another layer of enjoyment for me. And I love using my house and sharing my house with others. I love using my stuff. Like I love dishes and linens and decorations. And the whole reason I have those is because I want to use them. And over the past 2 years, it kind of makes me think about that song, Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast, where all the utensils and the serving pieces have been cursed, and like they're dusty, and they're just thrilled to be used when Belle stays for dinner. And I kind of think like that's what all my stuff is. It's wanting to get back out there.
Right.
I don't know. This year I am hosting Christmas, so I will have all of our family in our house under one roof for a week.
Woo!
And that means, that's a lot of meals, a lot of cleanups, but it's all worth it to me. And but I do plan to do things a little differently to keep me from getting exhausted. Because, it's a marathon. You got to pace yourself.
It is. I'll say one of the joys of hosting is that you're not going anywhere. You don't have to travel. And again, I mentioned how far away my family lives. My parents are in Missouri. My mother-in-law's in Kansas. My brother's in Oklahoma. And so when people come, that means we don't have to drive and leave our home. We love being at home. And so that's a huge bonus. But something else to prevent burnout is just knowing that even though people are coming, that, like you guys said, that just means that, okay, well, then your house is the one that everyone's coming to, which is great. But also some of the burnout is just delegating. I think one of the pitfalls you can come into is feeling like you have to do everything yourself. And this is something that I had to learn the hard way. I mentioned earlier that I felt that I had to replicate all of my grandmother's dishes by myself to a T. Mm-hmm. And over the years, so that resentment didn't set in, I had to say, hey, can you help with this? Hey, could you be in charge of this? Mm-hmm. Even if they were coming to my house, I needed to be able to speak up and not act like I could do it all myself, because that's what I wanted to. I wanted to act like I was Superwoman and I could have a beautiful home while hosting and provide these amazing meals the entire time people were at my house. Well, that is unreasonable. Mm-hmm. I was still a wife and a mom to 4 kids, and they all needed me, and they wouldn't keep the house clean. Mm-hmm. There were things that were, stacked against me. So speaking up, people that come to your home are not expecting you to do absolutely everything. Ask them to help and they will be glad to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read where one lady said, treat guests as guests on the day they arrive and the day they leave. And anything in between, treat them like family, because your life at your home is still going on. There's still things to be done. Like you might have to run to the store. That's okay. Have them ride with you. Have them help you cook a meal. You can fold laundry while you're chatting with them. Life can go on. Mm-hmm. And that's okay.
Right.
One of the biggest pitfalls I don't like about hosting, and this just may be my personality, but Julie, you mentioned that you feel this way too. I don't feel like I can really enjoy the event, because I'm trying to make sure that everybody has enough spoons, or, that we have enough plates, or that so-and-so is sitting by so-and-so, or that these 2 people aren't in a fight, or that this person's happy. It's not too cold in the house. It's not too warm in the house. Like there's so many things that is going through the back of your mind while you are trying to host something, that you don't really just to get to sit there and enjoy the guests. I think that is the best part about not hosting, is you actually get to show up and talk to people, and you don't have that running parade of thoughts in the back of your mind of all the hosting things. Does the garbage need to be taken out? Like there's just so many things that a host has in the back of their mind.
It's true.
And I have found myself full of resentment in the kitchen by myself while my house is completely full of people, and they're in other rooms chatting, laughing, having a great time. And I'm in the kitchen frantically trying to clean up and prepare for dessert or put things away. And I think that's my fault. Nobody's expecting me to do that. Nobody's asking me to do that. Get your butt out of the kitchen and go where the people are. It's really hard to do though, because we do have the next activity or the next thing. Yeah. We have taken responsibility by saying we would host. And so you have this whole event in your mind that nobody else is concerned about. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to couple that to be able to enjoy and go in the other room with the people and just think, well, it's just going to take a while to get dessert. We're going to all have to pitch in a little bit and then we can all get dessert.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to do. It is harder when they're there overnight, because it's not just the one meal and like, oh, we can deal with it after they're gone. You do kind of have to keep things going.
Right. Well, let's talk about some of the things we can do to help prevent burnout. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is, and I think you mentioned this, both of you, is delegate.
Right.
We have large family gatherings. It is impossible for me to cook every item of food that's going to go in someone's mouth and think beforehand of every single thing we're going to need. And it's just too much. Do all the decorations, do all the cleaning. It's too much for any one person. So we just hosted my mom's birthday party last night. And so I said to my siblings, how about we each bring a crock pot of soup and a loaf of bread to my house. And then I said to my adult kids, like, okay, you be in charge of something. And so they were in charge of desserts. So I didn't have to make my mom's cake, and I didn't have to make cute Halloween sweet decorations because someone else was making those. And I just kept the meal so simple. I had originally planned on maybe salad, but there was nobody to bring salad. And it wasn't that I can't afford to buy salad, but I don't want one more thing to think about. What do people like for salad? Getting it out. Like, I don't even care if it's salad in a bag. It's still, what do people want? Like, I got to make room for it. Like, I just decided, you know what? I'm keeping this so super simple. I've ran out of people to delegate to. So we're having soup and bread and desserts, and we'll all be happy. And I don't think anyone noticed that there wasn't salad or fruit or anything else on the table.
Right.
Yeah, I know once when our family was all together at the beach, we were staying in a beach house. And so we tended to cook and stay in for meals at night. And before we went down there, I assigned my married children a meal night. And I said, I want you to be responsible for a meal this night. And that means planning it, making the grocery list, shopping for it, and then prepping it, And that was such a nice thing. I think they enjoyed it. They didn't mind. And it just was so nice to have a couple of meals taken off my to-do list. So I felt like I was on vacation, because, hey, I am on vacation too.
Right.
And, so I think a lot of times people are willing to help. We just don't want to accept it or don't want to ask.
Right.
So if somebody says, hey, can I do this? Say yes.
Right.
Right. And even if they don't say, hey, can I do this? You can. I was just listening to someone talk about hospitality this morning, a little Facebook Live, and she said, do the invite and then say, and what do you want to bring?
Right.
And just flat out, just make it a part of the invitation. If you know it's going to be a large gathering. Now, sometimes if it's going to be small and you can do it yourself, you really don't need anyone to bring something. But if it's large, it's too much for one person.
Right. Well, one of the pitfalls is thinking everything has to be homemade. So this was a huge game changer for me when it came to Thanksgiving after the year that, everything went wrong. I started buying my turkey from Honey Baked Ham because it was good. It was already cooked and all you have to do is heat it up. And I had to let go of that part of me that said it has to be homemade. I have to season it. I have to cook it. And I thought, if the turkey is taken care of, that is a huge weight off of my plate. And all I have to do is heat it up. And so as soon as we moved to LaGrange, one of the first things that I started to do was checking out restaurants and who caters and who makes good casseroles, vegetables, side items, dessert. I have a running list of restaurants that I can go to get meals and side items and desserts so that if everyone is driving to my house, and I can go get those and have those. So first of all, not everything's going to be homemade. It's just not realistic. Second of all, the size of your hosting party makes a big difference. I will give an example of the biggest hosting gig Bryce and I ever put off was Abby's graduation and Grant's 16th birthday. We had at least 18 people staying in our home. And that's all of the cars that they drove to our house. That's all of the bedrooms, bathrooms, meals over close to a week. So this was a major event. Bryce and I joked that we were a bed and breakfast. He created an Excel document for parking spaces, bedrooms, bathrooms, every meal. We catered a couple of meals. We did ask for donations. At the very bottom, we said, we're happy to provide. However, if you feel led to, donate a little bit to help offset some of the food, because we had to make these decisions in advance. We couldn't wait to say, oh, can you take care of whatever? So we had 18 people. So everyone had an Excel document, like a things to do setting on their nightstand when they came into the house. They knew what to expect. They knew where to park. They knew. We even organized who was helping with breakfast. You were assigned oh, you're helping in the kitchen
butt
during
out of bed
this meal.
on that morning.
That's like you're at Camp Silliman.
You're helping in the kitchen for cleanup after this meal. This is free time. We listed everything. It was the most fun. I was the least amount of stressed, if that's even something to say. But everything had been planned out, even free time. And so I think if I took that mentality every time people came to my house, I wonder if that would help. I don't know. But we felt like in an extreme circumstance, we had to go to extreme measure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do agree that outsourcing is a big help. And that's not something that I ever would have thought was good in the past, but there is zero shame in buying something store-bought. And there's so many good options now, like restaurants, Trader Joe's, Aldi, Costco. Mm-hmm. Not everything at your local grocery store is probably the greatest, but we do have some better options now. And, put it in your own dish, dress it up. You don't have to have it in the full pan if you don't want it. And I have a good example. This past weekend, we had overnight guests. These were two friends from John's high school class. So I didn't really know them, and they're coming to stay at our house. And so I knew I would have dinner and breakfast to be responsible for. My mom had just been talking about a quiche that she made. It's kind of a family recipe. Like, I can make this quiche in my sleep. And I thought, I need to make that quiche for breakfast because that'll be something that we can just heat up really quick. And I was out at Trader Joe's and I was looking through their food and I saw a quiche Lorraine. And I thought, you know what? There is no need for me to make this quiche. Kind of like you said, Marie, even though a salad is easy, it's still just one more thing.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? I don't have to make this quiche. I can buy this quiche. And then sitting right next to it was this rustic apple tart. And I thought, this will be my dessert. And then then I drove to Costco and got their ravioli lasagna, which is a tried and true thing. We love it. And I bought that for dinner. And, I put that in my own casserole dish. And I still got to use my dessert platter to put the apple tart on. And dinner was running a little late, so I just pulled out some salami and cheese and made a little charcuterie board at the last minute. I was really proud of myself. Like, I didn't even intend to do that, but it was great. And, that was a truly enjoyable evening because all I was doing was reheating. And, I had put the stuff in my own dishes, but I didn't try to pass it off as my own. When they complimented the food, I said, well, you can thank Costco. But I just think the presentation is still important,
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's fun to get to use your stuff. So that was a success story. And it was a fun night.
Yeah. That's so funny how you said the presentation is important. I do think presentation is important, but sometimes hosting can feel overwhelming. One of the pitfalls or one of the ways we can avoid burnout is to remember that if you can't present it great, nobody cares really. Because I think, you can go on Pinterest and you'd never host another person if you had to. Like at the party last night, there were no balloons. There were no streamers. There was no happy birthday sign. There was no nothing. But my mother still felt celebrated. My son had made a bundt cake, and we can laugh about this, but he couldn't get it to come out of the pan without breaking. So he put it back in the pan, and we served it just upside down in the bundt cake pan with candles on it. Was that the best presentation ever? No. But you know what? It was cake and ice cream. It held candles. My mother felt special. Right. And in that situation, it just didn't matter. Like, I'm not going to remember that. I just think it's kind of funny, Yeah.
It's so
and there's
true.
a time to use paper plates. I mean, there is.
I was going to say that.
And I think it just depends on how long. Like, it's a marathon. If somebody's going to be there for a week, maybe a couple nights we are using paper plates. But I guess I was talking about presentation mostly in a way like stuff you already have. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily that
I'm not putting down presentation. I'm just saying sometimes presentation has to go out the window.
Right. Yeah, depending on the activity, the amount of people, the length of time. I was going to say the paper plates too, Julie, because I would love for my table to be gorgeous. But sometimes thinking about, but I don't have enough dishes to go through that meal with that amount of people. I don't have enough silverware. So thankfully, like Costco and Sam's makes these wonderful silverware that it's already in a tray. You take the plastic lid off, you set it right there. And you can get some pretty, nice plastic silverware to get through a meal if you're hosting and you have a lot of people. But sometimes you have to think about the cleanup. You have to think about how can we move into the next activity? Because maybe the meal's not the only thing people are doing at your house. And so you don't want to get stuck cleaning up in the kitchen for hours afterwards.
Yeah. And it's hard to fake your resentment if everyone else is off playing a game or watching a movie and you're cleaning up.
And you're in the kitchen.
So that is the ease of paper products is thinking about the next phase.
Right.
Yes.
I think it all just depends on time. Like last Thanksgiving, I had more time to prepare. So I had a really fun time putting together my table because my son was making the turkey and maybe like another side. And like my daughter was bringing, like I only had to make like one or two sides. And so that gave me the luxury of time to play with the table. I think time falls into it so much. Sometimes if we have too much on our plate, we can't get to those creative, maybe fun things that we would enjoy because we've overloaded in all these other areas.
Or you stay up till 2 a.m. doing those things.
True. And then you're tired for your gathering.
I was going to say,
been there, done that.
Anything you can do the night before is a lot better than waiting until the day of. So
right.
But not until 2 a.m. I mean, but you know what I mean. Anything you can do to plan ahead will help save you the day of.
That's why I'm such a big fan of crock pots.
Yes.
I would say on preparing ahead when we used to host our New Year's Eve thing, I would, pre-prepare breakfast casseroles, pans of lasagna, had all this stuff in the freezer because I thought this was going to make my time with the guests easier. But that can kind of backfire on you because what you're doing is ensuring that you are doing all the work. If you've done it all ahead of time, there is nothing wrong with someone watching and sitting at your counter while you're cooking the dinner or helping you. I mean, that's actually kind of a fun thing. I think that's more of a popular trend right now is having people over, like put them on the salads, let them start chopping, whatever. People don't mind that. And so I think for Christmas, that's, I will have a few things planned. Like, yes, you need to plan. You need to plan. You need to have the shopping done. But don't be afraid to let people, join in and help with the prep and the cleanup. And
Right. Well, let's talk about some more things of ways we can avoid pitfalls. And one of the things, Julie, that you had suggested is that we have the proper perspective. And I think at the beginning of planning an event, we're so excited about the getting together and we picture having all these great conversations. And like I try to keep this in mind. Like, what is the point of this gathering? Like my mom's party last night, I realized that after people left, like, oh, I never put out any plates. Like, I guess people just took their bread and just dipped it immediately into the soup because there were no plates. There were only bowls and spoons. But you know what? The perspective was, again, we had a good time. If they were really bothered by the lack of plates, they could have asked me about it. But like trying to keep in mind that, oh, well, everybody felt welcome, hopefully, and their basic needs were met. They were fed, they were warm, they walked away with full bellies and had a fun time. What do you guys do for perspective?
Well, I try to think this is a joyful season. This chaos is joyful,
Right.
And that with effort comes reward. Like, okay, what am I putting into if I feel like I'm putting into a lot, hopefully there's a reward at the end and to find a balance that I get to receive the reward, that I'm not too exhausted to receive it. So, yeah.
I totally agree. And sometimes if I'm hosting for more than a couple of days, which does happen in my home often, I have to take breaks. I have to, walk away. I have to go to bed early some nights because I know that I have introvert qualities. I get overstimulated and I will really get grumpy if I have no time alone or in silence or to just recharge. And so I do have to be intentional about running that marathon with people in my home so that I continue to enjoy the interactions and remember that it's such a blessing to have people in my home. I have to take breaks in the middle. So I'll have to go for a walk by myself, or I'll have to run an errand by myself. And I just know that about myself. The older I get, that I just, pace yourself. You're not going to feel joyful 100% of the time if people are there more than a couple of days. It's, it's just natural. It's natural to have ebbs and flows, and take some time away, recharge. You'll be ready to come back.
Mm-hmm.
That's always hard for me, because I feel like if my daughter's here for 3 days, I usually have a huge list of things I want to do, and we don't ever get to them all, So I feel like, well, if I go to bed at 10, I could stay up and we could watch a movie till midnight. I feel like I'm wanting to maximize my time, and that's when I get into trouble. I stay up too late, and then I'm tired, and I'm trying to do too much.
Right.
Yeah, maybe just set, I maybe tried in my mind to just set 2 goals for the gathering, 2 goals for your time together, and maybe try to meet those. And the other things is just bonus.
Just icing. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about if we've ever been on the other end. Were you ever the guest and you realize now that you might have contributed to your host's burnout?
I just remember when we were younger, all our kids were small. I mean, some were babies. And we would go to New Year's Eve at my cousin Judy and Ed. They lived in Louisville. And I just remember, all 5 of us, and even my parents, we would just show up for 2, 3, 4 nights. And my cousin, she was a gourmet cook. They had a beautiful, large home. And it just seemed natural, like, you're the perfect person to host this. And we just showed up. And she did all the meals, and I just never thought anything about what was going on behind the scenes to get ready for that.
Wow.
And how exhausted she must have felt. But she was just the most gregarious, outgoing, fun person I've ever known. So it just seemed so natural for her. But I know it had to be stressful. Even if that's your personality,
right?
It still has to be stressful. And in the summer, we'd go up to their lake place and stay on their boat, and and it was just, here we are.
So,
wow.
Yeah. And
does she listen to the podcast? Should you send her a link to this?
No.
I know.
And then and with little kids, that is even more chaos when you're not used to that anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a confession, but I guess I just want to say thank you to my mom and mother-in-law, because all through the years of me raising, little kids, until, the twins were about 2, my mom said, "Hey, Marie, time to step it up here." There was a long period of time where I didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And that is a real luxury. And I appreciate the fact that I could go and enjoy all those family gatherings and bring one thing. And sometimes it was bring bread. I think people felt sorry for me. Well, how's she going to make a dish and get all these people there? So they didn't really require much of me. But, it's a gift. It truly is a gift. And as the guest and as the host, now I look back and I just appreciate all the people who've hosted me over the years. Julie, when you used to take us on vacation, it was probably way more work for you than it was for me. And Mindy, all the times that I have said, "Hey, we're passing through. Can I spend the night?" And, aunts and uncles, people that have hosted me, it is a true gift to that you don't always appreciate until you're older.
I do think age plays a big role in that, because you just don't understand. And and that's the only excuse I have for acting the way that we did with my cousin, but because I really didn't know. I blame ignorance.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll say age or maybe responsibility, because when I started hosting, I was hyper aware of what it took. And so I have always been so concerned that we are a burden to anyone. And that's to our fault. For years, I thought that we were too much of a burden to put on people. And so you can kind of go the other way and not put yourself on other people, and you miss out on the relationships. But I honestly, I don't know that I have to confess anything. more I'm thankful that people come to my house because it would be easy for me to say, oh, I host all the time, like, and feel that is somewhat of a burden, but it's really not. Hosting has given us an opportunity to be in our home and not have to travel hours and hours with kids. And so that is a stressful thing when you think about the travel that's required to be with the people that you love. And I'm just thankful that my family will travel, that they will come to us. They still come to us. And I truly love that. And so I like my story, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So listeners, whether you are the host or the guest, hopefully this episode has given you a glimpse into what it's like to be either person. And you can, I know I appreciate being a guest now so much more. It's just like someone could say, just like, I don't care what anyone cooks me nowadays because I'm so tired of cooking. It's like that. Like if I'm a guest and I don't have to host, I don't even care how you do it. Just do it. I'll show up and I'll be happy.
I'll say, I don't even need a chair. I can sit on the floor.
I know.
It does not matter.
You just tell me what to eat and I will love it. If you've made that decision, I am so happy.
I think we all said this before when we said we want an invitation. We'll come. We promise.
Yes.
We don't have high standards.
No. We will help too. We'll bring something.
Right. And if you are hosting, we hope that this episode helps you to avoid a little bit of burnout because we will all be hosting. And we're right there in the trenches with you, women. All right. It's our generation and it's not our time to pass the mantle yet.
Not yet.
Not till we die. That's what Julie said.
I plan on passing my mantle before then.
Got it.
All right. Well, let's move into I'm a fan. All right. Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Well, I think I'm just going to say that I'm a fan of the rustic apple tart that I got at Trader Joe's. After we had that, everybody loved it so much. I went back to Trader Joe's yesterday and I bought 5 because they're frozen. And they're only the size of a salad plate. They're real small. And that's another thing I loved is if you buy the Costco apple pie, you've got leftovers for days unless it's for a huge group. So this way I can pull it out. I could pull this out for anybody and there's about enough to feed 5 or 6.
Perfect.
And it was so good, y'all. Like, you know how, European desserts, they don't tend to be overly sweet like American desserts. It was, just fresh apples. It had almonds.
You could have it with your tea.
Oh, I seriously could just pull one out and have it this afternoon. So
awesome.
Rustic apple tart.
I'm going to check that out. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a very reasonably priced sweater that I found at Walmart. Of all places. It was only like $12 and something. The brand is Avia, Avia, and it's got a bit of a wider neck. It's the perfect kind of high-low hemline. It has the thumb holes in the sleeves, but the sleeves pull up easily and will stay like halfway up my arm. The sweater is just like the perfect combination, and it is so low maintenance. It can go in the dryer. There's enough polyester in it. It doesn't come out wrinkled. It doesn't shrink. You can't hurt this thing. And it's so cheap.
Well,
so I'm wearing one
we can
now.
Find a link for that, and I can put it in the show notes.
I gravitate towards this. I bought 2 at the time. So I bought 2 printed ones, and they also have some solids. But when you're around the house, you have to be comfortable. And if I'm moving furniture and preparing for a meal and, all of this, I always gravitate towards my softest clothes that I'm comfortable in working in. And these 2 sweaters that I got from Walmart, I want to wear them all the time. And so I'm like, for $12 and something.
I know, it doesn't get a better endorsement than that. Want to wear them all the time.
I just love it that Mindy said she has a uniform for moving furniture. I love that
too.
Mindy, we're going to put that sweater down in the heck yes sweater column.
Yes, that's right. You see the messy bun in the hair. Like, guess what I was doing right before I sat down to talk to you girls.
Perfect. All right. Well, I am a fan of something that I served at my mother's birthday party because, like I said, I was really into keeping it simple. And I was at the grocery store getting ingredients for chili that morning. And I thought, oh, I should have some hot cider. And I remember making hot cider in the past and it needed like spices. And it was sold, the spices were like next to the cider in the produce department. And, they didn't have that yesterday. It was like, here's the cider. And I was like, you know what? I could Google how to make hot cider. I even did. And it was like complicated. And I thought, I wonder if you can just pour the cider in the crock pot and be done. Ooh. Like, do we have to add anything else? Could it just be literal hot cider? So that's what I did last night. I literally poured the cider into the crock pot a couple hours before people came. Hey, everybody liked it. It got drank up, if that's the right verbiage. Everything was gone about it. And I didn't have to stress about where are these spices. I couldn't find them and I didn't feel like making my own.
Oh, that's great.
I've heard you can add red hots. I've done that before. That's really? A weird thing, but that makes it kind of spicy. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe next time I'll do the red hots. But yes, if you want hot cider and you want to serve it for guests this fall, you do not need to stress. Just literally pour it in your crock pot and let it go.
Impressive.
All right. Well, you guys, I look forward to talking with you next week.
All right. This has been so helpful.
Yes,
thanks, girls. I'll talk to you later.
So much. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.